I'm usually pretty logical. I'm cool under pressure, and lately I've kept a ton of opinions to myself. But I have to break for a second. I'm censoring myself for a little while. As the mother of a black man child, I can't take the consistent misapplication of justice to young men that look like he will in a few short years. Furthermore, I'm frustrated about those of us who are to serve, not demanding justice for those dead, injured, and traumatized individuals and their families. Serve and protect, uphold the Constitution of the United States. These are mandates of certain positions, and they are not options. We have a criminal justice system driven by legislation that is supposedly reflective of our collective conscience. However, too many officers are denying young black men their due process. Officers are not charged to be judge, juror, or executioner. They are the front line of a larger system and are charged to bring individuals to a criminal justice system that constitutionally guarantees certain rights and processes. Killing unarmed citizens denies them those basic rights and issues them and their families a permanent sentence without chance for appeal. So then I say, let me get off my soapbox, take my young man to school, and get ready to serve my community today.
My son is brown, and he's been profiled all his life. And I didn't do a very good job of helping him with that. He didn't tell me about what happened. He wanted to protect me. I couldn't protect him. So we got to do something about this profiling. We got to do something about the way we look at people. What we see, what we think we see. And I'm going to tell you something else that's screwed up. I was a police chaplain for 7 years. I understand what it's like to be around violence. Police are around violence all the time. They should all have post-traumatic syndrome. Some of them have been in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they've been wounded, and they've been around too much violence. We just got to stop these crazy wars!
My poem to the nation. My eyes are dark and weary, my heart is full of sorrow. My mouth is filled with silence, and hugs no longer reach my soul. For what I witness in this world of unfairness is too much for a spirit to hold. I can no longer trust in democracy, and the Declaration of Independence means nothing to me. The Constitution and equal justice for all means nothing to me, for it is something that I do not see. Equality, human, and civil rights do not cease to exist. They are very clearly written in black and white. The problem is they fail to be enforced. When a toxic, hateful part of this nation rallies and celebrates the murder of an unarmed child of color, I am reminded of the days when people who looked like me had no protection or rights at all. This is not a letter of defeat, this is a poem of expression, and what this all means to me is we all have much work on high levels and low to do. But we must, like the saying goes, keep our eyes on the prize and never forget our past, or we may end up giving up our futures, and that is the truth.
My name is Derek Thacker. I'm here representing Workers' World Party and Fight Imperialism Stand Together. We're two working class organizations engaged in the struggle against police brutality. And before I continue, I'd like to thank the Rockford Anti-Racist Network and the Unitarian Universalist Church for organizing this demonstration. It's sorely needed at this time here in Rockford. And of course, I'd also like to thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. But we're here today to speak on the topic of police brutality, which is an explosive issue. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The bombs dropped on Vietnam exploded home." And he could have just as easily have substituted Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Syria, Yemen, Libya, or any other of the countries currently or recently bombed by the U.S. in the place of Vietnam, were he still with us today. On point, police have murdered more than 5,000 U.S. citizens in the last 13 years. The casualties of the war at home outnumber U.S. casualties in Iraq, Afghanistan, or the September 11th attacks. Not one street gang in this country can claim such a body count in such a span of time. I will again quote Dr. King here in further depth. As I have walked among the desperate, rejected, and angry young men, I have told them that Molotov cocktails and rifles would not solve their problems. They ask and write me, so what about Vietnam? They ask if our nation wasn't using massive doses of violence to bring about the changes it wanted. Their questions hit home, and I knew that I could never again raise my voice against the violence of the oppressed in the ghettos without having first spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, my own government. We cannot ignore the systematic and systemic persecution of black and brown people by the police in this country. We cannot view it as an isolated incident, a fluke brought on by bad apples in the police force. It's a matter of policy. No fluke, no number of bad apples in the basket can account for the horribly inflated rate at which people of color are brutalized, incarcerated, or killed outright by the police. The bombs that fall in Palestine, built in the U.S., explode at home. We must state unequivocally that resistance is justified by this brutal police state. Indeed, it is the only option left to us. The great Fred Hampton, murdered in his sleep by Chicago police in December of 1969, once said, "You have to understand, the people have to pay the price for peace. If you dare to struggle, you dare to win. If you dare not struggle, then God damn it, you don't deserve to win." Let me say peace to you if you're willing to fight for it. Thank you.
I want to mention the fact, he mentioned about Mark Clark and Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton was my uncle back then. I was a little shorty. When Dr. King asked the adults who would stand up, who was willing to go to jail, it was us youth that stood up. It was not the adults back then. I'm looking at 40 years to this day and looking at each and every one of us who's out here. And we had the same number that we had back then, white, black, brown, and Hispanic, standing together. We was 100 years, only 19 officers ever been convicted of killing an African American person or a Hispanic person, and they was only committed by the federal government, never by the state. After the Obama case, they formed a task force. But guess what this task force consists of? It consists of none of us. It consists of officers in the hierarchy that represent their different departments. In order to have a proper task force, it should be divided. Among the 12, it should be 6 citizens sitting on that task force, not all officers and what have you. And they have their meeting at the YWCA. That's a good thing what the YWCA is trying to do. But once again, you only have those that's working in office that's going to the meeting, not the grassroots people that's sitting right down here with me and you every day. They should bring that meeting not at the YWCA, but they should bring it right down here into our community, right down here into the hood, and talk to us. Ask us what our concern is. Ask us what our problem is with the 5-0. Ask us. We're not afraid of the police, but a lot of our young people despise the police. They feel that they're not going to live to see the age of 25, so they don't fear the police. We got to stop being afraid of each other and stop hating the police, but start finding a way that we can build a bridge together and work with the police, because the police are supposed to serve us. We don't serve them. And with that being said, thank you for your time.
Listen, as your boss.
I got one.
No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace! Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up!